From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. First, the headlines. Ramadan begins around the world. China allows 50 Muslims to fast after registering. Israeli police attack Palestinians as Ramadan begins. Blaming U.S. interference, Pakistani PM calls for fresh elections. Yemen finally has unbrokered truce. Activist protests as NYC clears homeless encampments. Our top story tonight is regarding Ramadan around the world. This is Islamic Foundation in Villa Park, Illinois, where on Friday evening Muslims gathered for the start of special nightly prayers called Tarawih for Ramadan. Some Muslims made a point of offering Tarawih prayers at Times Square in New York City. There are roughly 3,000 mosques in the U.S. serving about 4 million Muslims. Here are Indonesians holding special Ramadan prayers at Southeast Asia's largest Islamic house of worship, Istiqlal Mosque in Jakarta. Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. And in Pakistan, Muslims break their daily fast and join congregational prayers on the first day of Ramadan. Pakistan is the second largest Muslim country in the world. The government recently announced a subsidy on daily use items for 20 million households. And in Bangladesh, the government is providing food for people in need before Ramadan. Bangladesh is the third largest Muslim country in the world. Here, women pray at the Grand Mosque in Saudi Arabia's holy city of Mecca on the first day of Ramadan. Back in the U.S., President Joe Biden also marked the start of Ramadan Friday, saying this sacred month is a time for reflection and spiritual growth. He extended his and First Lady Jill Biden's best wishes to Muslim communities in the United States and worldwide. No media outlets in America reported the president's greetings. Muslims in the month of Ramadan fast from dawn to sunset in fulfillment of one of Islam's 5 main pillars. One Ummah radio station's inaugural broadcast hit the airwaves at the start of the holy month of Ramadan in the Canadian city of Halifax. After 2 years of planning, the station began broadcasting live from a small room in the basement of the Ummah Masjid. Abdullah Yusri, Imam and Executive Director of the mosque, said it was worth the wait. Yusri said it is the first Muslim radio station in Atlantic Canada. The first live broadcast was of the Tarawih prayer held nightly during Ramadan. Yusri said the idea of a radio station had been floated for years, but the need for it grew when the COVID-19 pandemic began. Chinese authorities in Xinjiang are restricting the number of Muslims allowed to observe fasting in Ramadan. The move has drawn heavy criticism from rights groups. For years, Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims have been prohibited from fully observing Ramadan in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, known to Uyghurs as Eastern Turkestan. That includes the government banning civil servants, students, and teachers from fasting. Some prefectures have received notices allowing only 10 to 50 Muslims to fast during Ramadan. Anyone observing the fast in Xinjiang must register with authorities, officials said. Care packages were distributed at Masjid Ar-Rahama for the start of Ramadan, 3 months after a deadly fire killed 17 people. The Bronx, New York community is still reeling from the tragedy at a nearby apartment complex. A number of the dead worshipped at Masjid Ar-Rahama. Hossein Ouage, who serves on the mosque's executive board, said while the lives lost cannot be brought back, we want to bring the community back. Imam Musa Kaba said care packages will be provided to survivors. Ramadan is a time when Muslims seek ways to perform more charitable deeds. Many of the fire survivors remain displaced and face economic uncertainty due to their immigration status. On Saturday, France's Interior Minister denounced racist comments defending his greetings to French Muslims commemorating the start of Ramadan. Gérald Darmanin condemned the ordinary racism of people for his April 1st tweet wishing all Muslims in France a happy Ramadan. The controversial French minister had announced shutting down 92 mosques in 2021. In January, Al Jazeera reported that a group of lawyers, NGOs, and religious bodies from 13 countries submitted formal complaints to the United Nations Human Rights Council. These called for action against France's breadth of state abuse against Muslims, stretching back more than 2 decades. Israeli police attacked Palestinians outside the Old City in East Jerusalem late Sunday, leaving a dozen people wounded, sources said. Palestinians congregated there after nightly prayers for the second night of the month of Ramadan, which began on Saturday. The Palestinian Red Crescent said 11 people were wounded in clashes. 8 local churches in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania have pitched in to prepare a home for Afghan refugees. The family of 10 Afghan evacuees arrived earlier this year. Church volunteers have been painting, sanding, and ripping out old carpeting in the home. Once the family arrived, volunteers drove members to medical appointments, helped the children sign up for sports, and the parents set up utilities. In related news, Afghans pray at the Pole Khashti Mosque in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, during Ramadan, the first Muslim holy month since the Taliban took over. We're bringing more news stories after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. Brothers and sisters, we all watch the Allahu Akbar lady from India. She's amazing, isn't she? She's neither compromising her hijab nor her education. She's standing tall. We must stand with her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect her. But it is not just hijab, brothers and sisters. Indian Muslims are facing genocide.
Genocide that we face in India is not a new phenomenon. India has had several genocides.
They are attacked every day. Even the Indian government admits there has been more than 1,800 organized attacks on Muslims, but they call it riot. 660 people are hanged to death in India, lynched in broad daylight, sometimes just because they were accused of eating beef. Yes, accusation of eating beef can kill a human being in India. We cannot remain silent, can we? Alhamdulillah, OIC has spoken, that is good, but why in the world United Nations is silent? The UN has a responsibility to protect. It has a duty to prevent genocide. Sisters and brothers, we must stand with Indian Muslims and other minorities. We are free, they are not. We are not attacked, they are under attack day and night. Let's do our job. I have signed this UN petition. I ask you to sign it now. Thank you so much.
Mr. Speaker, if I decide to wear a turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban, or coming from Bongo land, we can appreciate full well the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime? And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
Pakistanis will head to the polls to elect a new government within 3 months. On Sunday, Prime Minister Imran Khan foiled an attempt to boot him from office by getting the president to dissolve the National Assembly. The Assembly's deputy speaker refused to accept a motion of no confidence in the government. Khan appeared on TV to say there had been foreign interference in Pakistan's democratic institutions. He urged the president to dissolve the assemblies and let the people decide through elections. The presidency, a largely ceremonial office, acceded hours later. Khan was elected in 2018. Opponents accuse him of economic mismanagement and bungling foreign policy. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said Sunday Russia's leadership was responsible for civilian killings in Bucha outside Kyiv. Bodies were found lying in the street after the town was retaken by Ukrainian forces. Zelenskyy vowed to investigate and prosecute all Russian crimes in Ukraine. He spoke as global outrage mounted after the discovery of civilian killings in Bucha. Zelenskyy said there is a common responsibility for these execution-style killings, switching from Ukrainian to Russian in his video address. Russia has denied killing civilians in Bucha, which it controlled since its invasion began February 24th. Bodies were discovered in the streets when Ukraine gained control. An Algerian man has been released from Guantanamo Bay prison, where he was held since 2002 and sent home to Algiers. 48-year-old Soufiane Barhoumi was captured by U.S. forces in Pakistan and accused of training al-Qaeda terrorists. He was recommended for release in 2016, but was held back for 6 years. On Saturday, the U.S. Department of Defense said Barhoumi's release was agreed upon in February. The Algerian government provided unspecified security assurances to secure his release. Only 37 detainees remain at the notorious military prison in southern Cuba. President Joe Biden resumed regular releases and expressed his desire to close the prison. The United States is urging Yemen's warring rivals to abide by a 2-month truce brokered by the United Nations. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken welcomed the UN's announcement of a truce in the conflict and the parties' acceptance of its terms. U.S. Special Envoy to Yemen Tim Lenderking has been involved in diplomatic efforts with the parties and UN Special Envoy for Yemen Hans Grunberg. Blinken said the truce would hopefully facilitate the flow of goods and people, bringing much-needed relief to millions of Yemenis as they observe the holy month of Ramadan. On Friday, a group of activists staged a protest in New York City against Mayor Eric Adams' effort to clear the streets and subways of homeless people. Protesters gathered outside City Hall calling for greater access to housing and better conditions at homeless shelters. City sanitation workers and police cleared 239 encampments in 12 days. Officials said only 5 people at those sites agreed to go to homeless shelters. Since November, New York City's Department of Homeless Services in Lower Manhattan has been evicting homeless people. The city of more than 8 million residents is one of the richest in the world. Yet, according to Bowery Mission, New York City has more than 80,000 men, women, and children who are homeless. Progressives hailed Friday's unionization vote by employees of an Amazon warehouse in New York City as a historic victory for workers. The move may inspire a call to action for others seeking to organize. Erica Smiley, executive director of the labor advocacy group Jobs with Justice, said this victory represents a watershed moment in the labor movement. Employees at Amazon's JFK 8 warehouse in Staten Island, led by fired worker Chris Smalls, defeated a multi-million-dollar union-busting effort. They formed the Amazon Labor Union, the first Amazon union in U.S. history. The trillion-dollar company has ignored employees' demands for safer working conditions since 2020. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. To discuss the establishment of Drs. SHIREEN and AFZAL Ahmad's professorship in South Asian arts in the Department of History of Art at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Samana. It continues to happen. When Muslims do something great, nobody attaches, hey, Muslims have done this thing. It goes on and on and on. A Muslim couple in Chicago has given a largest single gift of probably any Muslim community in Chicagoland, from Chicagoland area. And it is not to a mosque, not to charity abroad, but it is for South Asian arts. They have established professorship to be named after them, the SHIREEN and AFZAL AHMAD Professorship in South Asian Arts. It's a $2.75 million gift. It went to the University of Michigan. Ahmads are both physicians and philanthropists in Chicago and are founder of South Asia Institute. They are joining us from their home in Chicago. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Walaikum assalam. Thank you, Mujahid.
Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. SHIREEN Ahmad is a former professor of anesthesiology at Northwestern University. Dr. AFZAL Ahmad is a physician who led building of a mosque in Chicagoland area, as well as Hamdard Foundation. So tell us, what's the story behind this great news that you have endowed a professorship? I don't know any other Muslim physicians who have done that from Chicago.
Yeah, sure.
Well, it's an endowment that we felt was necessary. We have collected South Asian art and enjoyed South Asian art for over 50 years. The first piece of art that we bought from the area was in 1971. Over the years, the collection has grown. It's grown to the point where we felt it was important to share it on a larger scale, and that was the reason for us establishing the South Asia Institute, where we regularly have exhibitions of both well-known and upcoming artists to promote the art and heritage, because we also do other cultural events. But one of the things that became obvious to us when we got involved with this is there's also a lack of South Asian artists being exhibited and in our mainstream museums. And when you begin to look at the reason for that is that you find that a lot of the art from the region, from South Asia, in mainstream museums is medieval art, is the ancient traditional art. A lot of it goes up until the time of the Mughals. And that's because a lot of the art in these institutions comes from collectors, Western collectors, who traveled to these areas in those times, collected some of these works, and then donated them to institutions. And so that's where the collections come from. The other reason for that, of course, is the fact that when we were colonized, the colonizers convinced us that our art was not worthy. It was not an art form. It was a craft, not an art form. And to some extent, I think that continues to be maintained. That attitude continues to be maintained in some of our mainstream museums. But there, in general, there is a lack of knowledge about modern and contemporary art from South Asia, just in general. Probably stemming from the fact that it's really not taught in art history programs. And so you end up with curators in some of these mainstream museums who really don't have much knowledge about modern and contemporary art from South Asia. And we wanted to change that.
So you both being Pakistani and Muslims, why you did not choose to have exhibition or the collection of Muslim arts? Muslim are in the news, right reason or mostly the wrong reasons, or Pakistani art? Why did you choose the South Asia as a focus?
Well, I think part of the reason was that, a lot of people have talked about Islamic or Muslim art, but in reality, what is it? Is it created by Muslims, or is it created by people who live in countries that are called Islamic countries or so? Nobody really knows. And also, most commonly the Islamic art has been coined to represent some of the gilding and the writing in different kind of forms you see exhibited in museums or so, because there is frowning of depiction of any human beings or even animals in some of the societies. So we really don't know what actually constitutes an Islamic art. So that was one reason. And the second reason was because, we consider ourselves as South Asian, and there's been large influence of art made by Muslims under the Muslim rulers. So would that constitute an Islamic art? Maybe, maybe not. But if you look at it really in detail, the Islamic art, to me at least, represents that you either have a decorative art in metal form or in mosques or buildings or so, or gilded art in the forms of pages of Quran being written by different musannifs. And to us, it's good for collection, but it's not good for putting it on your wall to decorate your wall. So we went the route of something that we were familiar with growing up in Pakistan. So we started with a lot of Pakistani art, and then also looked at the region, and a lot of art from India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka interested us. And then when we had enough of that art, we started thinking as to what we are going to do about this art. There were different avenues we could explore, either give it to a museum or start a legacy of a South Asian institute. We looked around and there was no such thing as South Asia Institute. Everybody, say from Pakistan, did their Pakistani stuff, India did their Indian stuff, Bangladeshi similarly, and Sri Lankan also. There are so many commonalities between these four countries, not only in visual art, but in other forms of art, literature, songs, dances, and film also. So we try to bring everything under one roof in South Asia Institute so that we can try to be friendly to each other rather than at each other's throats. If we are not Muslims, we don't like each other from different countries. So the idea was to try to develop a system where we can sit together and talk together about our commonalities, which does not include the religion or the politics of the region.
Why it was important for you to endow this chair?
Well, I think Shireen touched a little bit on that. When we looked around and tried to talk to different university places that have South Asia institutes or South Asia-centric organizations or groups that study that, the art was at the lower end of the denomination. Most of these South Asian departments in these universities. They dealt with language, with religion, with politics also, but very few that we could find dealt with the art. And also going to a museum, we felt very uncomfortable going through the museum because all they talked about was Mughal art and medieval art of South Asia, nothing more recent like contemporary or modern art, which is probably the best around in the area. And one needs to interact with that because, as you know, the artists do their work or express their opinions like the writers done in literature, but artists do on a canvas. And they tell a lot of stories. And those stories, we wanted to tell as to the life of South Asians and the problems with the societal ills and all that. So that was the reason why it was important for us to confront and work with the South Asian art and the universities where this is being studied, because if you don't endow a professorship, no work gets done over there of any consequence. So to us, research was important in this field, which has been lacking for a long time. If you compare that to European art, there are plenty of research, whereas in South Asian art, there's hardly any research. So we wanted to change that by donating this professorship.
Well, thank you so much for that consideration. Also, I noticed that, as you mentioned, that Sri Lankan art or Indian art or Pakistan, but South Asia as a category probably struggles for definition. I remember at the University of Chicago, all undergrads are required to go through a whole 1 year of civilization. So there is Indian civilization and European civilization or Greek civilization. But when I looked at Indian civilization, it has religion, Hinduism, Buddhism, but zero about Islam. So South Asia definition seems to continuously struggles. So your move to have a South Asia professorship, I hope, will be able to define that there are a substantial amount of diversity of faith, cultures, and tradition in there. But tell us, how did your interest begin in collecting art pieces?
Like I said, it was innocent. When we came to this country and had our first home together, you think about what you put on your walls. And we didn't understand American art, and we couldn't afford good American art. And so the first time that we went back to our home country, to Pakistan, we were fortunate. And really, I really sincerely mean that. We were very fortunate to have met a person, an artist himself, but also a mentor of several artists, a man named Ali Imam, and art collectors and art enthusiasts know him. And Ali Imam, over the years, became a friend, but he was the one who actually started us in the right direction by sending us and introducing us to other artists. There were no galleries at that time. I'm talking about 1971. And so we were introduced to artists who we got to know. And it was through these friendships then that you met other artists. And so we were buying art directly from the artist and learning as we went along and developing this wonderful relationship with these people that then just grew. And I think on our travels, we would collect art and art books. Those were the two things that we would that we ended up acquiring over time.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Shireen Ahmed and Dr. AFZAL Ahmed, for your contribution and talking to us on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you.
Back to you, Samana.
Thank you, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.